Grand Rising. Hope everyone is doing well.
Grand Rising, Grand Rising. Mic check 1, 2.
Yes, let us know if you got some ones. Put the ones up. Let us know you can hear us. Go ahead and finish getting everything situated. All right. Got ones. And hold on. So how's everyone doing out there today? Hopefully y'all had the opportunity to look at Title IX and you have some questions. Hopefully you'll be able to follow up with everyone. What we're talking about today. Going to fill in some gaps. Get some questions answered, and of course ask some questions. So before I get started, I owe Bones and No Sellout and Copper Indio an apology because their mics were turned down lower than mine yesterday, and I could hardly hear them when I listened to the replay of the show. So for that, I apologize. But I'm going to get on the chat because y'all should let me know. So y'all supposed to hold us accountable. I am not supposed to be louder than those guys. All our volume should be at least equal. So shame on y'all. I'm just joking. But at the end of the day, if the sound's not right, I need y'all to let us know so we can get it corrected. So I don't want to sound like I'm over talking or anything like that. So just let me know. Hold on. All right. Copper says, "Oh, good." Well, we want to make sure we hold ourselves accountable. So, don't want to be making it seem like my volume has to be louder than anybody else's. There was this peace and love. Can't folk. Class is in session. Pull up a seat. I'm good. Thanks for asking. Oh, doing well. So, Grand Rising Pamela Hall, Grand Rising Do Division, Grand Rising Ladarian Woods, Grand Rising Copper Indio, Macadam 1, Lady LJ Free, Grand Rising Alphawood Jones, Prince William County representing, Grand Rising Oak Cliff. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bones.
Saying Grand Rising, peace, everyone. Just got back from sending all them links out.
Okay, cool. It's good. So, I was giving the chat a hard time because I listened to the show this morning before I was setting up, and my vocals was louder than yours, and that's not supposed to happen. So, had to get on the foot. Not correct me on that. This is a Conscious Assembly, not TMH. So what y'all see in the background playing is actually a slideshow concerning Title IX. It's 31 slides. So if you want access to it, send us your email and we can send that to you. You know, but I wanted it to be playing in the background and give you, I guess, what's the term I'm looking for, Bones? Visual stimuli.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. Grand Rising Enrique. Grand Rising David Corey. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Hopefully, again, like I said, everyone had the opportunity to look at the link. If not, it's all good. We're gonna get deep into this. And we're talking about Title IX of the Civil Rights Act. Yeah. Of course, I anticipate some bombs being dropped, and we got Doodoo Vision in the building early. So, as always, Doodoo Vision, aka James Flame, aka Choctaw Jimmy. You know, you always got the link to come on in. So, any insight that you can provide is always great, because we want to make sure that we provide all aspects. Grand Rising, no sellout. Hope everything's well with you, bro. Give us a mic check so we can make sure your levels are right.
2 2 1 2. Mic check.
That was Lotto.
Okay, now you sound like you goggling rocks, Bones. What we gonna do with him? No sellout. What we gonna do with him?
I don't know. You might have to do a handstand.
I guess they don't like me no more.
So
once you get on devices, it'll be sweet and cool. Now they're like,
Grand Rising Antonio Batiste. So we're going to be talking about Title IX. It's basically an education amendment of 1972. So, go ahead and put the link. For those of you who weren't paying attention, or you might not be used to the format, the link to the website that we're going to be talking about now is under the title. So it should allow you to copy and paste it. If not, I'm still going to post it, but now it's there, so you don't have to wait for one of us to post it. So,
man, people ain't trying to close out their chat.
I'm just trying to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, links in the description box, y'all. Easy to click when you first come in.
Yeah, but I am going to post it, so you ain't gotta.
No question.
But just trying to make the process a lot easier. That's all. Yes, I can. It's a link. Title IX. We're going to be reading from Wikipedia. So I just posted a link in the chat. We're going to be reading from Wikipedia. And of course, the sources are at the bottom for you to cross-reference and cross-check. There's a lot of sources. I'm looking at it, looks like over 81 sources. So it's gonna be interesting. But before we do that, we gotta take care of business at hand. I want to welcome all the new listeners, the new subscribers to Cab Grand Rising Show, brought to you by Autonomous Assembly, where the real work gets done, which is basically the gathering of the minds that do the work. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising up Indigenous American voices by using genealogy, not to be confused with DNA, also known as family history, which is the study of families and the tracing of their lineage and history. Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, genetic analysis, and other records to obtain information about a family and to demonstrate kinship and pedigree of its members. We also are operated by core values, as all companies are and should be. And our core values are the foundation of our company, which is essential to our success and serve as a lens through which we evaluate every business decision. And our four main core values are, but are not limited to, integrity, which is know and do what is right. Respect, treat others the way we want to be treated. Responsibility, which is embracing opportunities to contribute. And servant leadership, which is serving the common good. And our core values and our mission can be found on autonomousassembly.com. And as always, I'm going to defer to Bones to make sure I didn't miss anything. If I did, he can add to it or let me know what was missed, so we cover all bases. So Bones, I miss anything? Leave anything out? Anything you want to cover? Oh, hold on. Got the doorbell ringing. So like I said, I was asking if there was anything that I missed.
I think you completely covered everything.
All right, cool. So how was your day yesterday after we concluded the cab show?
It was good. It was nice and festive and busy.
Okay, cool.
Mic check, 1, 2.
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
All right. Just had to grab the other device.
Dude of Vision said, "Is that Mr. Roper from Three's Company at the door?" No. No, it is not Mr. Roper from Three's Company at the door. But thanks for the reference.
We got a door.
Yeah, the doorbell. When someone comes in to the chat or the panel, it's a doorbell. And
Okay, I got a request. Special doorbell ring. Let me stop. I'm waiting for the put in this project.
No, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. And I don't know how to do that, so no, it's not happening.
Toasted.
Really? That's what we're doing? So yesterday, Dude Vision was making reference to Title 9 and then tying it back to the original intention of Title 6. So we're going to read what Title 9 was and is and tie it all together back to Title 6 and what its original purpose was. So that's the reason why we took this turn that we did. Dude Vision has never steered us wrong, so this is where we're gonna go. Alright, so everybody ready? Y'all got your hard hats on? Got the vehicles tuned up?
Like we do about this time. Let's do it.
So the link is already in the back chat. Grand Rising Copper Color Queen. We're about to cover Title IX. And as we're starting to notice, and I guess an epiphany for me was reached yesterday, that there are a lot of entities and organizations or groups not only using programs to benefit us and help them get paid, but they're also using our energy and our buy-in to get it started and spearheaded, and then we're basically left by the wayside. So I'm going to make the assertion that this is no different. So we're talking about Title IX. And anytime we're talking about or discussing civil rights, the presumption for many improperly labeled African Americans, black folks, is that it's only talking or pertaining to people of color, or our people of color, meaning mislabeled black people, mislabeled African American people. But as we discovered yesterday, civil rights is not specifically nor exclusively about us. And in many instances, we found that it wasn't about us at all. So there are a lot of other groups not only using our energy and our momentum in the crisis to piggyback and jumpstart their movements and become powerhouses in their own right, but we end up getting left by the wayside because we have not learned from their successes using not only our energy and our work, but the mechanisms that our ancestors left in place for us. Grand Rising Golden Moon, aka KD. So, being that we've talked about 184 on Monday, we talked about Title 6 yesterday, and we're talking about Title 9 today. I have a feeling that it's going to be the same dance, different partner, if you will. So let's go ahead and get it in. Title IX. Title IX is a federal civil rights law in the United States of America that was passed as part of the Education Amendments of 1972. This public law number 92-318 86 Stat.235, codified at 20 U.S.C. United States Code 1681-1688, was co-authored and introduced by Senator Birch Bayh, with an H at the end, in the U.S. Senate, and Congresswoman Patsy Mink in the House. It was later renamed Patsy T. Mink Equal Opportunity in Education Act following Mink's death in 2002. The following is the original text as written and signed into law by President Richard Nixon in 1972. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Cornell Law School's Legal Information Institute, 20 U.S. Code 168. So, knowing what we know about how these laws are passed and who they generally benefit and who generally receives the majority of the benefit, who do you think this law was written? Because it was spearheaded by Senator Birch Bayh and Congresswoman Patsy Mink. Who do y'all think this was benefiting? That is such a sinister laugh, Bones. Such a sinister laugh. So how about we find out who this Congresswoman Patsy Mink is, and maybe that'll tell us a little bit more about what we need to know. So I'm gonna put that.
All hats.
I'll put that link in the chat. So, Patsy Matsu Takimoto Mink, born December 6, 1927, passed or transitioned September 28, 2002, was an American lawyer and politician from the U.S. state of Hawaii. Mink was a third-generation Japanese American and member of the Democratic Party. She also was the Assistant Secretary of State for Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs. That is a long title.
They see that on the business card.
I know, right? Mink served in the U.S. House of Representatives for a total of 12 terms, representing Hawaii's at-large 2nd Congressional District. While in Congress, she was noted for co-authoring the Title IX Amendment of the Higher Education Act. Mink was the first non-white woman and the first Asian American woman elected to Congress. She was also the first woman elected to Congress from the state of Hawaii and became the first Asian American to seek the presidential nomination of the Democratic Party in 1972 election, where she stood in the Oregon primary as an anti-war candidate. From 1978 through 81, Mink served as the president of Americans for Democratic Action. Doodle Vision says, yes, let's look into Congresswoman Patsy Stand By Your Man Klein. I'm not doing that, Doodle. So, what we know so far is she's a third-generation Japanese American and member of the she was a member of the Democratic Party, and she was the Assistant Secretary of the State of Oceans and International Environment and Scientific Affairs. She was the first non-white woman and first Asian American woman elected to Congress. Now, here's something to take notice of, because you can learn a lot about what they don't say versus what they say. They said she was the first non-white woman. Why didn't they say first minority? Because white women are minorities. That's number one.
Bingo.
Something to think about. They mentioned first non-white woman and first Asian American woman to be elected to Congress. It says she was also the first woman elected to Congress from the state of Hawaii. So that means up until 1972, all the individuals that had been elected to Congress from the state of Hawaii were men. She also was seeking the presidential nomination of the Democratic Party in the 1972 election. Now that's interesting. So she was running for president. Well, she was running to be nominated as a presidential candidate in the 1970 election.
Mm-hmm. That's something they don't tell you every day.
No, this is the first time I'm hearing this. So that's very interesting.
It makes you think Hillary and all them were the first to ever try.
I know, right? Interesting. So let's look a little bit at her family background. You know, everything is relevant and everything is relative. So let's see what we can find. It says Mink's parents were second-generation Japanese Americans or Nisei. She was a Sansei, or third generation descendant of Japanese immigrants. Her father, Sumatsu Takimoto, was a civil engineer. Her mother, Mitama Teteyama, was a homemaker. Sumatsu Takimoto graduated from the University of Hawaii in 1922, the first Japanese American to graduate from the University of Hawaii. For several years, Mink's father was the only Japanese American civil engineer working in Maui. He was passed over for promotion several times during his career. The positions instead offered to white Americans. He resigned his local position in 1945 in the aftermath of World War II. Do y'all remember what led up to World War II? The bombing of Pearl Harbor, which is where? In Hawaii, where her father was.
But you know what's funny?
Go ahead.
You know that I noticed real quick? We're in Hawaii right now, what we're talking about. And you notice it's Japanese descendants running for these positions. We're not talking about no natural-born Aboriginal Hawaiians in these positions. Nope. That's the part that struck out to me.
Well, at this particular time, Japan had a serious stronghold on Hawaii. Doodle Vision says she wasn't the only one. Reagan is the prez, but I voted for Shirley Chisholm. I remember that. Yep, Shirley Chisholm. Yeah, she also ran. Pamela also said they was trying to kill him off. Yeah, at that particular time, during the early 1900s, all the way up until the time when I got stationed in Hawaii, there was a heavy Japanese influence.
I remember what we read last week. Is what happened is when the Americans was out there at Hawaii, when did they give Hawaii their independence? After Japan moved on the island.
That's true.
That's what we covered last week. After Japan got there, then they did the same thing to what was it? Philippines. They did the same thing. In the Philippines, they moved the indigenous people to Guam. In Hawaii, they moved them to Guam and other islands. Just touching up on something we touched last week.
Already, things are starting to tie in. So remember, her father resigned in 1945. The bombing of Pearl Harbor happened in 1944. It says he established his own land survey company in Honolulu. Mink's maternal grandparents were Gojiro Tateyama and his wife Tsuru. And Gojiro was born in the Empire of Japan during the 19th century. He arrived in the territory of Hawaii late in the century and was employed on a sugarcane plantation. He later moved to Maui and was initially employed as a worker for the East Maui Irrigation Company. Subsequently, Gojiro was employed as a store manager and filling station employee. He also delivered mail throughout the backcountry of Maui.
So we heard they got sugar plantations on Hawaii. Sugar plantations on the island of Hawaii.
Just like they had sugarcane plantations on all islands in the east. Doodle Vision
now you
says,
know they got them on West, but they had them on Philippines and Hawaii. We heard so far.
Doodle Vision says Mink Coat was trying to steal the women's votes from Shirley Chisholm. That makes sense because it says here that Shirley Chisholm succeeded Lenore Sullivan in 1975. And LJ Fee says, didn't Geraldine Ferraro run for vice president in the early 80s? Yes, she did. I can't remember who she was on, what ticket she was on.
It wasn't Ross Perot, was it?
Was it? I can't remember. It's possible. Doodle Vision says it was Mondale. That's right.
Yeah, Walter Mondale. Yep.
So it goes on to read, the Tatayamas lived in a shack by Wakiyomi Stream. They had 11 children. William Pogi, Gojiro's employer at the irrigation company, arranged to have the Tateyama female children educated at the Manaloa Seminary, boarding school for Christian girls located in the town of Makawao. Really? So they was educated at a seminary boarding school for Christian girls. Indoctrination begins. Hold on, let me go answer the door. Come on in, Copper. What's good?
Grand Rising Copper NDO. Peace, peace. Glad you caught that cat is rising.
Doodle Vision says Monte
Grand
Lower
Rising,
Seminary.
everybody tuned in. How we all doing?
We're doing well. We're doing well.
Love it.
So we're reading about Patsy Mink, who was the co-author of the Title IX education law or the amendment. Doodle Vision crazy. He said, "Hey, it's Larry to see Jack Triple." Really? Anyway, so we found out that the daughters of the Tateyamas were sent to a Manaolu Seminary boarding school for Christian girls located in Makawao. Now these words are Hawaiian or Hawaiian dialect or Hawaiian tongue, which if you listen to them and you look at them, are heavy with vowels, like the majority of your Indian languages are. So pay attention to that. Early years of education says Mink was born in Hemekua-Poko on the island of Maui. She attended Maui High School and in her junior year won her first election to become student body president. The month before her election, Honolulu was attacked by Japan. Her coalition building strategy worked and she won a close election in 1944. Mink graduated from high school as a class valedictorian. Mink moved to Honolulu where she attended the University of Hawaii at Manoa. With medical school and a career in medicine her ultimate goal, during her sophomore year, she was elected president of the Pre-Medical Students Club and was selected as a member of the varsity debate team. She spent one semester from September 1946 to January 1947 enrolled at Wilson College, a small women's college in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Before transferring to the University of Nebraska, where she once again faced discrimination. The university had a long-standing racial segregation policy, whereby students of color lived in different dormitories from the white students. Now think about that. We only hear about discrimination against mislabeled African Americans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it says here that anybody that wasn't white got separated from the white students.
Yeah, because even studying the census, you can see they separated people that way. Because remember, these titles, Japanese and Chinese, they came from the census later.
Yep.
So how was they labeled before they gave them separate categories? Lumped in with us.
Something to think about, right? So it says, this angered Mink, and she organized and created a coalition of students, parents, administrators, employees, alumni, sponsoring businesses and corporations. So wait a minute. Pay attention to the wording. It says she organized and created a coalition of students, parents, administrators, employees, alumni, sponsoring businesses, and corporations. Grand Rising Big Hawk. Now she's a college student. Where is she coming up with the network to do all this? It says she was elected president of the unaffiliated students of the University of Nebraska, a separate student government for non-white students who were prevented from joining fraternities, sororities, and regular dormitories. Mink and her coalition successfully lobbied to end the university segregation policies the same year. After her successful fight against segregation at the University of Nebraska, Mink experienced a serious thyroid condition that required surgery and moved back to Hawaii. Pamela Hall says her father. Doodle Vision says corporate sponsors. Who were those corporate sponsors? That's a good question. It doesn't even give us a link, but we can definitely look it up.
Well, we know her father was an engineer, so that's a good bread from the start.
Mm-hmm. It says after her successful fight against segregation at the University of Nebraska, Mink experienced a series of thyroid condition that required surgery and moved back to Honolulu to heal and finish her final year of college at the University of Hawaii. She earned bachelor's degrees in zoology and chemistry from the university. In 1948, none of the 20 medical schools in which she applied would accept women. A disappointed Mink decided the best way to force medical schools to accept women would be through a judicial process. Mink decided to go to law school. Mink applied to the University of Chicago Law School. Unusually, the school had admitted women from its inception in 1902, and Mink attended law school with several other women. Mink obtained her Juris Doctor degree in 1951. So we know that she became an attorney. Well, she got her doctorate, her Juris Doctor degree in 1951. She hadn't taken any bars yet. So we know that she faced discrimination, but she also got discrimination practices removed from the University of Nebraska. And she was organizing and creating coalitions, which included students, parents, administrators, employees, alumni, sponsored businesses, and corporations. And Free says, how do you come to a land full of melanated people, set up shop, and then say no one can live, move, or breathe around you without a law being passed in order to allow it? Hashtag rhetorical.
I'll just note that that's something that will not be allowed for people in the U.S. outside of the U.S. military to do in other places. None of us as civilians can go to a foreign land, buy up land, or set up shop and then prevent others from showing up or interacting with us. I'll just note that as well.
Doodle Vision says, wait, with a bunch of exclamation points. Indian women have been in medical schools since the 1800s. Really? But it goes back to talk about what we always said. Why couldn't she be admitted to a medical school? Well, because she wasn't Indian. And she wasn't white. And she was a woman.
Remember, they started the story letting you know she's a third generation Japanese.
Right.
They ain't say nothing about no American, nothing about no Indian, third generation Japanese.
So, but that's something to think about. Doodle Vision says Indian women have been going to medical school since the 1800s, and why couldn't she be admitted to medical school? Because they were the ones facing discrimination on a larger basis than we were in some areas. So they go into the family and early career. The student division says now we're going to get into who Title IX was for. Okay. While attending the University of Chicago Law School, before I go any further, for those who are just coming aboard, we're talking about Patsy Mink, who is giving credit for co-authoring Title IX. I've already dropped the link in the chat, and I will put the link in the chat again for those who are just getting in. We're covering Patsy Mink, who is giving credit for being the co-author of the Title IX Education Amendment.
Y'all know what time it is. Double strap them seatbelts. Make sure them steel-toe boots on. Pick action, shovels, and hard hats. We going in.
Hard hats time spent today. If not, you got to get off the construction site.
So it says, while attending the University of Chicago Law School, Patsy met a hydrologist, John Mink, while playing bridge at the International House. He would become her husband and lifelong partner. Unable to find work as a married female Asian American attorney, she returned to her student job at the University of Chicago Law School library, while her husband found work immediately with the United States Steel Corporation. Of course he would. In 1952, Patsy gave birth to daughter Gwendolyn, or Wendy, who later became a prominent author and educator on labor and women's issues. That's no coincidence. The family soon moved to Hawaii in August 1952. Now, this is interesting. Looking at the climate of the country in the 50s. Now, this is after World War II and we had declared victory. And this is where we're experiencing what we call an economic boom. This is the baby boomers generation, right? Where you had the men predominantly going to work and the women staying at home raising their families, and this is where there was a boom in the housing market as well. So the reason why I'm stating this is because it would be very rare at this particular time when the breadwinner, i.e. the husband, would find work working for a major corporation, and then they would move to his wife's home in Hawaii. United Steel at this particular time was a large corporation, and they already had a child. Doodle Vision says, happy days with Fonzie and President Eisenhower. So I just want y'all to pay attention to that. So it says, by law, Patsy was required to take the residency status of her husband after marriage and needed to reestablish her Hawaiian residency in order to prove that she was eligible to take the Hawaii bar exam. I'm going to read that again. By law, Patsy was required to take the residency status of her husband after marriage and needed to reestablish her Hawaiian residency. Reestablish her Hawaiian residency in order to prove that she was eligible to take the Hawaii bar exam. Why was she
was not originally from here. That's why. She's not an original resident of Hawaii. They're Japanese.
So is it safe to say that by leaving a state that you were not originally from, and you are a non-Indian, and then you get married, and then by law you have to take on your husband's residency, even though that you were born, because she was born in Hawaii. she wasn't legal, but she wasn't considered a legal resident.
No,
Oh,
look at it this way.
Dudu said Hawaii wasn't a state then. Okay, that makes sense.
And also look at it this way. If you're living in a city now and you move to a new city, how long do you must live there before you're considered a resident of that city to where you can run for local politics and stuff like that? In most cities, 5 to 7 years, you're a resident there, you can start running for politics in that city.
Well, I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. We're speaking about 1950. We're speaking around the 1953-54 era. Free. So I know, like, if you need to be able to go to college and get in under the be considered a resident college-wise, you gotta be living there a year in some states. So it's a state-by-state situation. But again, like James said, Dudovic says, Hawaii wasn't a state then. It's a territory. So the laws were different. So she was required to take the residency status of her husband after marriage and needed to reestablish a Hawaiian residency in order to prove that she was eligible to take the Hawaiian bar exam. So she had to reestablish herself as a Hawaiian citizen in order to be eligible to take the Hawaiian bar. After challenging the status as sexist, Hawaii's Attorney General ruled that since she had not ever physically resided in Pennsylvania, she had not assumed her husband's Philadelphia residency status. After passing the bar exam in June 1953, Mink continued to face gender discrimination and finding work as an attorney in the private or public sector. She created a solo practice with the help of her father. She was the first Japanese woman to practice law in Hawaii, the Hawaii Territory. Mink founded the Every Man organization, a group that served as a hub of Young Democrats Club of Oahu. Oahu was like one of the major cities in Hawaii. I mean, Oahu is the island where Waikiki Beach and Pearl Harbor is located. Excuse me. It's interesting that she called it Every Man organization. It says the group would wield a remarkable influence over Hawaiian politics for several decades. In 1954, Patsy worked to help elect John A. Burns to Congress. The following year, she worked as staff attorney during the 1955 legislative session and drafted statutes and observed the inner workings of the legislature. Free says that makes total sense now. Hawaii didn't become a state until 1959. It says, as the territory of Hawaii debated statehood in 1956, Mink was elected to Hawaiian Territory Legislature, representing her district in the Territorial House of Representatives. In 1958, she was elected to serve in the Territorial Senate. In 1959, Hawaii became the 50th state of the Union, and Mink ran the Democratic primary for the state's at-large congressional seat. She was defeated by Territorial Senator Daniel Inouye. From 1962 to 1964, Mink served in Hawaii State Senate. In 1960, the Democratic National Convention, a speech by Mink, a Hawaiian delegate, persuaded 2/3 of the party to keep their progressive stance on civil rights. That's interesting.
Something just dawned on me.
What's that?
During World War II, over 350,000 women joined the U.S. military, American women, and another large percent went into the industrial force because of the large gap with the war. That's when you had women building planes and working on the assembly lines, you know, when they showed Laverne and Shirley back then.
Right.
So what women are they really talking about here?
It looks like they're talking about the Japanese women.
Foreign women? Foreign women that didn't have no say-so or no rights?
That's what it looks like. Definitely looks that way. So let's move on to 1964, and she became the first Asian American woman and first woman of an ethnic minority. Stop.
The key word is right in front of it. Ethnic. I don't know who they think they fooling.
Have a good day, Afwa. In 1964, Mink became the first Asian American woman and first woman of an ethnic minority. So she's the first woman of an ethnic minority to be elected in the United States Congress. But we already had Indian women in Congress. What is the definition of an ethnic minority?
Backhoes, front loaders. Let's go.
Let's see. Oh, my computer's moving a little slow on me. Come on. Give me a second, y'all. Oh, boy. Oh, Cliff says, where are the Africans? That's a good question. Doodle Vision says Yahtzee.
Definition. Ethnic minority. A group that has a different nationality or cultural traditions from the main population. Noun. Again, ethnic minority, a group that has a different nationality or cultural traditions from the main population. Makes you think, huh?
But if we're supposed to be from Africa, wouldn't we have a wouldn't we be considered an ethnic minority? Right?
Fact. So what are they saying? What are they saying? If she's the first ethnic minority.
All right, so what am I missing?
Ain't we in this country way before the 1950s?
Mm-hmm.
So she's going down as the first ethnic minority. Who are we again?
Oh.
I'd say if you're not in the mind. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We can't be from another land because an ethnic minority, by definition, different traditions and cultures from the main population. So in 1950s, by that definition, we're considered part of the main population. So how are we 13%?
Exactly. This math doesn't add up.
Think about it. In 1950s, 1960s, we was not considered an ethnic minority. It would make sense because when King was marching, they didn't say black, they didn't say African, they said Negro.
And Doodle Vision says, and we're claiming minority status, aka African Americans.
Mm-hmm. Something that was only created for the census that didn't get attached to you till 2000.
That's crazy. Very crazy. All right, so let's get back to the Oak Cliff says, here goes the hoodwinking and bamboozling. Doodle Vision says, you keep what you kill. Necromancy is from Riddick. It says, Pamela says, okay, so did she practice her tradition or did she practice the Hawaii way? That's also a good question, Pamela. We don't, I don't know. It didn't say. Well, she couldn't have practiced her tradition, because traditionally Japanese would marry Japanese. She married a European, a Caucasian man. Her last name is Mink.
Yeah, it never says you had to practice your culture, though. Anyone that's coming from a culture that was outside of the main population.
Dude, it just says Mink coat. You're so funny.
It's just amazing out of all the stuff we heard going on in the country up to this point, that this is the first time this term is put to use. And the definition makes you wonder, like, hold up.
Yeah, see, we've been taking, one of the things that I noticed we've been seeing, especially the last few shows, is a lot of these terms that have been established, like minority and multiculturalism and all of these things we've been talking about, directly or indirectly. Everybody's been taking those terms and just assuming that what context we've been given when we're told what these terms are, we just take for granted. We never go back and look at, well, where did the use of these terms start? How were people using these terms during these periods we're looking at? And see, once you start to see when people are determined to be minorities, when people are determined to be colored or Negro or whatever have you, therein lies what the real meaning of that and what the real context of that word is, and how it applied to people during that time.
That's a great point, Copper. Very good point. Situational.
Exactly, situational.
Doodle Vision says she wanted an American name, thus spawned Patsy Mink.
You know what? That's also a very good point. A lot of people who are immigrants to the United States in particular, but the Americas in general, tend to want names that match or resemble those of Americans. And if you look at Hollywood, a lot of people are children of, let's say, immigrants from East Europe or in some cases West Europe, and they may be of a certain faith or whatever have you, a certain lineage, and they change their names so that they sound more American, quote unquote American.
Right.
And so you see the same thing here on the with the East. The Easterners that come to America, sometimes tend to intermarry and take on name or change their names to those that sound a little more American.
Right.
They got to be a group of them.
Cliff says African and Asians on my job changed their names to American names. I'm sorry, Bones. What you say, bro?
This is right after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
This is right after the lockup of all the Japanese that was in America.
Mm-hmm.
Could this be part of that settlement?
I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah, it is
Because
possible.
she would have to be speaking for a group of people. She's not speaking for a group of so-called American women. So she would have to be speaking for a group of foreign women. And we do know during World War II that they locked up Japanese. Wouldn't that be a population of women as well?
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking.
Doodle says, yep.
Yeah, because she would have to be speaking and representing a group. And we know that group ain't the so-called colonizers. We know it's not us.
Doodle says, I told you it was about to get good. Yeah. So, it says, in 1964, Mink became the first Asian American woman and first woman of ethnic minority to be elected to the United States Congress. She served 6 consecutive terms. Mink took what she learned in high school and built some of the most influential coalitions in Congress. Her most important coalition was one to support the Title IX Amendment of the Higher Education Act, in which she was one of the principal authors and sponsors, prohibiting gender discrimination by federally funded institutions and outgrowth of the adversities Mink faced through her college. Cliff mentioning the people of African and Asian descent who changed their names. She said they stay to themselves, but they nosy. Don't want you in their business, but they all up in yours. That sounds about right. It also goes on to read that in 1970, Mink became the first Democratic woman to deliver a State of the Union response. Now, this is significant. It says she became the first Democratic woman to deliver a State of the Union response. Not first non-white woman, but first woman. The same year, she was the first witness to testify against President Nixon's Supreme Court nominee, George Harold Caswell, who would eventually be rejected by the Senate. Harry Blackmun would eventually be confirmed instead. Mink also introduced the first comprehensive Early Childhood Education Act and authored the Women's Education Equality Act. All of these laws, written by Mink, were declared landmark laws by Congress, and as they advanced equal rights in America beyond what could be imagined during the time. Title IX Amendment of the Higher Education Act was renamed by George W. Bush on 29 October 2002 to become the Patsy T. Mink Equal Opportunity in Education Act. She co-authored and sponsored the act while in the House. In 1975, she was the chief sponsor of House Resolution 9924, granting $5 million in taxpayer contributions, $23.3 million in 2018 dollars, for both the state and National Women's Conference, which President Gerald Ford signed into law. From 1975 to 1977, during the 94th Congress, Mink was elected to a position in the House Democratic leadership as Secretary of the House Democratic Caucus.
Senator Hall hit it right on the head, because that's what I noticed during the timeline in the years. This woman is doing all this posturing in political reshuffling at the same time that Martin Luther King is marching.
Mm-hmm.
Right after King, somehow the Civil Rights Act spent directly into the women's liberation movement.
That's right. Like we were talking about yesterday, these are folks that are building off of what we started. Everything that is going on and everything that will happen always starts with us. Period.
But y'all want to know something that's interesting? The things that we don't do are the things that they did. She got corporate sponsors. She got coalitions. She found nonprofit organizations. She set up entities. She got political backing.
And that's the difference. When you got people who know they have these resources and are willing to use them, they can go and take what we already start. They can build on top of it, right? Because they align themselves with it. That way they're latched to it. And then they use the resources that they already know to run out there and acquire.
Doodle says, I wish I could call in, but this Hex Brother No Sellout put me under, has me busy. Jinxie is at it again.
That is messed up, yo.
Jinxie.
Ain't nobody doing that.
I gotta do it.
Do it.
Since we have to do a lot better with our follow through. That's true. We do.
It's ironic that we're looking at the hijack. We're looking at when it turned, how it got hijacked, the people that was responsible and how they did it.
Exactly. This is literally the hijack of our movements. Not only the hijack of our culture and the moving forward of our culture, like we were talking about yesterday, but all of our movements, all of our political, social political movements, I guess I should say. This is how our thing became their thing. And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and I think we're about to say the same thing, so go ahead. I'll mute until you finish. Just go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, and once they take our thing, they claim it as theirs, and then say we have nothing to do with it. Or if anything, when it goes sideways, we're the reason it went sideways. Go ahead with your thought.
Doodle Vision says Shirley Chisholm was the heir apparent to what Dr. Martin Luther King started. Mink coat slid under the radar, and she sided with white lesbians.
Right, because in that you're getting women's liberation, you're getting the first big wave of feminism. Okay, so you're seeing where the narrative is beginning to shift now, and to focus on a subgroup of the group that was already in focus.
Not only that, but if you think about it, these organizations are patient enough to wait for there to be a travesty in our community or an uprising in our community, because they know we're an emotional people. And once we get emotional, they come in and either riding with us or riding on the momentum from what we've already started.
Exactly. And to circle back around to yesterday again, when we were talking about President 44, Barack Obama, remember his speech?
You're breaking up, Copper.
That was it, and they would wait until the opportunity strikes, and they will take full advantage.
Oh man, they don't want them saying.
And that's what they have always done.
Breaking up real bad.
Oh, sorry. You got to me better now?
A little
No,
bit.
you're still breaking up.
You sound like Bone sounded yesterday.
That's an accurate description.
All right, that a little bit better. I think I'm in a better area
There you go.
Yeah, you good now.
now, but okay, sorry. Nah,
Nope.
Wow.
I don't like. Circle back around yesterday. The Obama administration. What happened? Am I still breaking up?
You did. As soon as you
Mic
started.
check.
Yeah, you good now.
Okay.
Let's see that.
Okay. All right. So in Obama,
Yeah. Obama don't want you to talk about him.
Obama's presidency, the president first term, when he came in, his chief of staff. If y'all know,
But every time you
Yeah,
mention
yeah.
Obama,
Never
you
let a
can't.
good crisis go to
We
waste.
might want to give the code word. What was it? Equal or something? What was it? Never mind. Don't say that either.
Bro, you can't. I mean, every time you start speaking and you mention President Obama, you get like, you sound
say
like
Michelle.
you sound like he's a say Michelle.
They let you talk about Michelle.
Oh, okay, I'll just say 44 then. How about that?
There you go. That'll work.
Okay. So yeah, 44's chief of staff was saying never let a good crisis go to waste, and that's what they do. They sit and they wait until the crisis comes, and they take full advantage. That's what.
Can't say crisis either. Can't say crisis either, Archie.
Now you sound like a slow Decepticon with a dead battery.
First started coming here to conquer this land. Well, they come in and they wait for the. All right, mic check. Is that better? I apologize, y'all. I'm in the car, so.
But look, you fine as long as you don't talk.
I'll keep my mouth shut then.
To answer Pamela Hall's question, no. The Civil Rights Act was what they were part of in 1964. With Lyndon B. Johnson signed, that was the Fair Housing Act after Martin Luther King passed away.
And Doodle says, speaking of President Obama, what school did his mama attend in Hawaii? I don't know. What school did his mama attend in Hawaii? I'm sure Doodle will tell us. The same as Mink. That's what Pamela Hall says. Okay, so she attended the same school as Mink. Okay. LJ
Yeah,
Free
University of Hawaii. I just looked it up. University of Hawaii.
It said, Pamela, that's why. Free says, Pamela, that's why I asked what year we are speaking about, which was early mid-50s. Hawaii became a state in 59. The Civil Rights Act was signed in 64. Yeah. So what we're noticing is that whenever there's an adversity or there's outrage in our community, we have these groups that come in under the apparent guise of support, and then they end up hijacking and taking over our whole movement and getting laws passed to benefit them, while we're left with slogans and sayings and nothing appears to change in our community, because what it appears to be happening is that we're thinking that these bills that are being passed and enacted upon are here to benefit us, when in actuality they're benefiting the groups that came in to support us or came in under the guise to support us, and we're not benefiting at all. So we don't set up anything, we don't put anything in place, and we don't have any political power or political presence.
Right, because after all our great leaders have been taken down, we had this mindset that somebody else, and even during that time, we still had this mindset that somebody was going to show up and make everything right for us, and then we would be all right. and we were talking about that yesterday as well, where we start accepting a lower and lower standard of justice for ourselves. And so we latch onto these movements, or let these movements latch on to us, better way to put it. And these people take what we have and our resources and our momentum, and they run with it. They make it about them. We never asked for anything. Who asked President Obama for anything? Who asked 44 for anything? We were just happy to have him in the seat. We didn't care what he did. And he didn't do anything for us. Is that a coincidence?
That was one of the biggest mistakes when he got into office, that we didn't question him. We should have been banging that door down.
That's right. We should have all been trying to get to the White House, and not for the tours either. But no, we let him sit in there. We let him do his thing, and we said he got it. He talked a good game, so he'll be on it. And he looked good in there. He looked sharp. He walked with a strut. He did everything we wanted him to do visually, but that's all a facade, because what do we tangibly have to show for it? LGBTQ plus community has plenty to show for it. Okay? The Hispanic and the migrant population has plenty to show for it. What do we have to show for it? Nothing. Because we never asked for anything. All these other groups asked for something. All these other groups demanded that he do something for their vote. We never did. We voted. Matter of fact, we went and voted for him because they looked like us. I talked to a lot of people when I worked on the campaign, and they were voting for him. They didn't really care anything about John McCain. They didn't care to learn anything about John McCain in 2008. They didn't care because he looked like them. Now, if we have a group of people that, let's say, don't look like us, that vote for a candidate that doesn't look like us because he looks like them, we would be outraged by that. But this is what many of our people have been reduced to. We don't give our own people that get into places of power, and we don't hold them to any standard or any responsibility. So they do what they want. And what they want to do is usually for the people who enrich their pockets. Look how much money Barack Obama makes now on speaking engagements versus how much money he was worth back before 2008. And they always tell this story when they were on the campaign and we were working for the campaign. They always tell this story about how he had a used Civic and he couldn't really afford his apartment and this and that. And he making multi-million-dollar speaking engagements now, touring the world. Who got this man this money? Nobody ever questions that. And he got, several times over enriched. But how many of us got enriched by this? How many of us got opportunities to go and start our own businesses because of something that he's given us? Not because of stuff that was already there. I'm talking about because of him being president. So what was the point of him being president? You got to start asking this. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound all of this grumble or nothing, but I see I see what we're talking about in the same kinds of mistakes that our people make, to this.
Yeah, it says the women's liberation movement, aka the Broad Burning movement, happened in the late 60s.
Yes.
1969. At the same time, the women's liberation. But you know what was funny about this?
What?
Little known fact that there was another civil rights movement going on at this same time, the Black Miss America.
Mm-hmm.
Sandra Williams, the activist, who became the first Miss Black America. And after that, they end up, oh my goodness.
Go ahead with it, bro. Because there's a whole bunch of moving pieces going on in 1969. So you had a whole lot.
She becomes the face of the Black woman during this time. And then from here, both women join parties and it becomes a uniform front.
Go ahead.
Because before this time, what fight did the Aboriginal woman have in this? What stake did she have in it? Like we said before, it's not like we was living in the country where the Aboriginal man was in charge holding down the Aboriginal woman. Both parties, you know what I'm saying, was fighting for their dignity and who they were.
Right.
Because it was a trick. Remember, they had activists set this up, the Miss Black America pageant, at the same time the protest for the Miss America pageant was happening 2 blocks over. Why would we care about a black Miss America? Really? What that was gonna change for our life?
Right. You give us something nice to look at. The same with most of our leaders. Just gives us somebody to look at and make paintings and pictures and stuff that we can put up in our churches and houses and feel good about it. But that's about it.
Doodle Vision says someone asked where was Messy Jesse at this time. He was organizing Rainbow Push.
You have to ask yourself how ironic this happened. The same day, September 7th, 1968, the Protest and Bra Burning Act. At the same time, the Miss Black America pageant was going on. And it was set up by, I gotta look up the activist's name. I think it's Jay Morrison something was the activist that set it up at the Ritz-Carlton.
Okay, I found it. I'll put the link in the chat. Miss America protest. And when you look up the Miss America protest, it shows the Miss America protest. It shows women throwing bras in a trash can and burning them.
Mm-hmm. Another moving piece of this, and her name usually gets lost when we talk about this because she's in it, but she doesn't get mentioned directly. But Gloria Steinem, columnist for New York Magazine, co-founder of Miss Magazine in 1969. Steinem published an article, "After Black Power, Women's Liberation," which brought her to national fame as a feminist leader. She, in 2005, later on, she, James Fonda, and Robin Morgan co-founded the Women's Media Center, an organization that works, quote, to make women visible and powerful in the media. It's on Wikipedia if you look up Gloria Steinem on there. But so the other thing about Gloria Steinem, though, is who is she connected to? What part of the government was she connected to? Okay, so that shows you how some of the direction of this hijack is being churned. Because she worked for intelligence. I'm not gonna go any further on that. I'm gonna just say she worked for an intelligence group within the government, and that much she has admitted to. She was on the payroll at the time when she wrote these columns and talked about, after Black Power has gotten what it needs, now women can get what they need. Trying to change the narrative, and it wasn't that the quote-unquote Black Power movement got anything of any substance that would justify that. It was basically, we're taking this over and we're turning it into this.
Right.
Check out how this is worded. It states, the Miss America protest was a demonstration held at the Miss America 1969 contest on September 7th, 1968. Attended by about 200 feminists and separately by civil rights activists or advocates. Again, it says about 200 feminists and separately by civil rights advocates.
So it was two separate protests. Basically, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. That
And if you
became one. Because, like I said, at the same time, you had the Miss America pageant going on, was the civil rights protest.
do division says Gloria in excelsis Deo. Yes. What people that aren't as familiar with what the government was doing on the back end and around this time is there was orchestrated chaos or controlled chaos that was going on at the time. And so you have these dueling movements, these small storms turning into one big storm, essentially. Look at some of the race riots that were going on around the same time, and what part state and local governments, along with the federal government or in coordination with the federal government, were doing at the same time to get the party started, so to speak. You got to start looking at who all is involved with whenever you see these protests that just pop up out of nowhere. Dick Gregory used to warn about, not following everybody that was talking good game and talking about going and getting action, because you follow them, you get in the van and go to where they were talking about going and get arrested on the way because of the setup. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about these protests, burning bras and all of this other silly stuff. This is a setup. All of this was a setup. So now that quote, "Let no good crisis go to waste," makes a little more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I was reading some of the information on this part where it ends the article. It says the group decided to incorporate the techniques successfully used by the civil rights movement and adapted it to the new idea of women's liberation. Again, it says the group decided to incorporate the techniques successfully used by the civil rights movement and adapt it to the new idea of women's liberation.
And so think about the implication of this. Think about how many women in our communities began to listen to this because, as far as they knew, this was legitimate. This was something that needed to happen. And they started to, a lot of these women look next to them and started to question the men that were in their lives. They started to rearrange their lifestyles and their living situations. They started looking at the assistance that the government was giving for women that didn't have their husbands or significant others in the house. Think about how this began to shape the quote unquote black household at this point and onwards. So, but not just in a social sense, but think about what was told to these women that followed this about them going into the workforce and making equal pay as men and this and that. And those are all things you could point to and say these are good things. These are things that legitimately need to happen. Because every movement that's gonna come up to lead people astray is gonna start talking about stuff that people can agree with. We talk about some of the movements from yesterday. A lot of these movements started up saying, "Hey, we're people. Respect us as people," which nobody can argue with. But then it slowly turns over time into, well, respect us, but also be okay with what we do. Be okay with who we are. Be okay with how we're different, which is fine. But then it goes even further and starts saying, well, promote it. Don't just be okay with it. Don't just tolerate it. Promote it. Be about it because we're about it.
I got a link for you.
All right.
To
And
add
that's
on
not
to
the,
what you're saying,
okay. And
it
see,
says
this isn't
organizers
just.
and participants.
I'm sorry, bro.
No, it says organizers and participants. It said in her letter requesting a permit, Morgan named the sponsor of the protest as Women's Liberation, a loose coalition of small groups and individuals. She was the key organizer of the protest. The advisory sponsor was Florence Kennedy's Media Workshop, an activist group she founded in 1966 to protest the media's representation of African Americans. Would you see it? Promoted.
Mm-hmm.
They already had the mechanism. They already built the mechanisms off of us.
Right. And look at the catchphrase, representation. Look how we still using that catchphrase today. Representation in movies, representation in politics, representation for the sake of representation. We're not going to put you in there for any meaningful purpose. We're just going to put you in there momentum as a token of Antonio Batista says, I'm a patriot. Yep, I'm with the level patriot. I'm down with the Brown. Exactly. And this is the playbook. When you look back at 2016, this is the playbook she was going off of from the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna show up on a quote unquote African American radio show, and just conveniently have hot sauce in my purse so I can pull it out, because African Americans like hot sauce, right? Saying it with the wink and the nod and a grin. Come on, pandering.
And think about it. Pamela Hall also hit this one on the head. While we out there in the fronts fighting, getting loud and emotional, getting locked up, they behind the scenes negotiating for what they want. Let's take the whole Black Lives Matter movement. We know how it started. And look at the three brothers that started it. They're no longer here. But while everybody was out there in the streets protesting, behind the scenes, the movement got hijacked. And look what it became today. Perfect example on how it was done. We watching it in real time, in time.
Yes, we are. An example of this is we mentioned Black Lives Matter yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's look at some notable people within Black Lives Matter, and I'm looking at one in particular, DeRay McKesson. Okay. This is a fella that would show up. This is like 2015, 2016. This fella would show up at a BLM protest, get arrested. And I remember seeing a picture of this dude. This brother got arrested, and the police had his arms up behind his head. He's looking directly into the camera like it was a photo shoot. I mean, it was him getting arrested at these protests was so manicured and so massaged and so meticulously crafted that it was always gold in the newsroom whenever he got arrested. So they had a nice neat picture of him that they put up big on the front page of the newspaper whenever he got arrested to show the struggle of Black Lives Matter. And then the next week he was going to the White House talking to President Obama.
Doodle Vision says the mosquito skin RBG jacket vest wearing dude was a conduit for lesbians to take over.
That's exactly right.
Puppets and the Puppet Masters and the crowd that laughs at the show. Antonio Batista. Cliff Tiff says Condoleezza.
Nice one.
Rice, baby.
So are we seeing the playbook that's being used on us and against us and with us? We're part of the play, and we don't even know it.
That's right.
Because ask yourself, why would they give you the illusion of them getting locked up and going to jail? Because if you go back to our movement, then they lock up King, X, anybody else that was out there speaking. Then they get you emotionally involved when you're seeing the people out there fighting for you on the front line, willing to go to jail for you. That's how they activate them emotions. That's why they keep showing you this stuff. Get you emotionally invested and blind.
We were talking about this a little bit after the show yesterday, but anybody familiar with the original series of Star Trek knows what happens when Spock, the Vulcan first officer on the ship, goes through Kulinar. When they have a ritual that happens every few years where they build these emotions up because they're hyper emotional, but they have to suppress it, which is why Spock always seems to have no emotion. He seems to just speak in logic and function logically. But there's a purge that needs to happen for him to be able to continue moving on without this display of emotion. And when Spock goes through this ritual, he is unhinged. He is causing all kinds of trouble on the ship because at that point he's got the strength of 10 men, and he's using it in pure emotion. This is how we end up being herded up. They get our emotions going, and they treat us like Vulcans going through Kulinar.
Great analogy. Doodle Vision says he and Sean King got into it because Mosquito Jacket wanted to push the gay agenda. Ask me how I know. Okay, I'll bite. Doodle Vision.
Oh yeah.
How do you know?
Yeah, please tell us, because I remember that.
Antonio says create the environment for the intervention. Exactly. So when you get a chance, Doodle Vision, you can tell us how you know that Mosquito Jacket got into it with Sean King because he wanted to push the gay agenda. So while we're waiting on that, okay, he says I was on the phone calls with them and broke away from MLB, a BLM. Okay. Well, you're going to have to come on the show and tell us about that when you get time. We just have to make sure Jinxie on vacation. That way you'll be able to get a break. I'm just playing.
I don't go on vacation.
Say what?
I said I don't go on vacation.
Fair enough. Grand Rising, James Gilmore. We're talking about the Title IX and how Patsy, he got me calling her Patsy Cline. What's that woman's name? Patsy Mink authored the Title IX movement in conjunction with the Civil Rights Movement to get Title IX passed. But it wasn't passed for who we thought it was passed for. So I'll put the link in the chat. So it talks about how she also introduced the first comprehensive early childhood education act. He said Title IX was in response to Title VI.
Right. I think you mentioned something about going back after this, going back and looking at Title VI to see the context of it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. So I'll put that So this is the Higher Education Act of 1965, Title VI. So the Higher Education Act of 1965 was legislature signed into United States law on November 8, 1965, as part of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society domestic agenda. Johnson chose Texas State University, then called Southwest Texas State College, his alma mater, as the signing site. The law was intended to strengthen the educational resources of our colleges and universities and provide financial assistance for students in post-secondary and higher education. It increased federal money given to universities, created scholarships, gave low-interest loans for students, and established a national teachers corps. The financial assistance for students is covered in the Title IV of the HEA. So, because this was a state-funded or federally funded program, and they were still discriminating, that's the reason why Title IX was instituted. Higher Education Act of 1965 was reauthorized in 1968, 72, 76, 1980, 86, 1992, 98, and 2008. Current authorization for the program in the Higher Education Act expired at the end of 2013, but has been extended through 2015 while Congress prepares changes and amendments. Before each reauthorization, Congress amends additional programs, changes the language and policies of existing programs, or makes other changes.
Now, this still needs to be updated because I'm not sure if they ever got the. They probably have, but I don't see where they mentioned after this point in 2015 what they did. So
right. Doodle Vision says this is around the same time as the APA was pushing the gay agenda. Homosexuality was removed from the mental disorder list in 1973. Wow, I never knew it was considered a mental disorder.
It was. I want to say it was taken out.
They used to do treatment for it. They used to have treatment centers.
Wow.
Yeah, it was in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, DSM. I want to say DSM either 3 or 4. Yeah, it was in there, and it was removed around the same time. This is one of the talking points that Dr. Umar uses a lot in his lectures. He talks about.
Yo, this rabbit hole gets deep. Oh my gosh. So, the 1965 Act that says January 1965 Representative Edith Green of Oregon introduced H.R. House Resolution 3220 as a bill to strengthen the educational resources of our colleges and universities and to provide financial assistance for students in post-secondary education. Senator Wayne Morse of Oregon introduced the Senate version of the bill, X600. The bill sought to create an advisory council to review teacher training programs and to create a national teacher corps, which would recruit teachers to serve in low-income areas and train teachers through internship. Other provisions of the bills included financial aid, scholarships, work study, and library enchantments. Throughout 1965, numerous hearings were held by Special Subcommittee on Education and Education Subcommittee of the Senate Committee on Labor and Public Welfare held numerous hearings. Based on the recommendations of university administrators, educators, and student aid offices, a new bill was introduced, H.R. 9567. It was passed by the House of Representatives on August 26, and the Senate passed the bill on September 2nd. In signing the Higher Education Act of 1965 into law, President Johnson said the act, along with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, as keystones of the great fabulous 89th Congress, would spread the roots of change and reform throughout the nation. Well, that's an understatement. So Doodle says this around, okay, the APA was pushing a gay agenda, homosexuality was removed. Okay, I didn't read that. Want to make sure I'm just keeping up with what everybody's posted. Okay, he says, what was Patsy Mink's educational background in again? Let me see. Give me a second.
Yeah, like he said, white women were giving money to teach in our neighborhoods.
About that. Exactly. And if people paying attention for, over generations, you start seeing that the teacher was in the classroom began to change over time. And I remember seeing that. And I'm an 80s kid. I was going to school in the early 80s. And I remember even then, over time, the neighborhood teachers beginning to change.
Yeah,
because I'm like you. When I went to elementary school, my school was all melanated.
mm-hmm.
And over a couple of years, I watched it change with the teachers.
And you used to have men in the classroom that help with certain things, and there were teachers that were good teachers, and then a lot of them went away.
You said a lot of them went away and did what? You cut out.
So a lot of them went away as well. I didn't see. I don't think I had a male teacher that wasn't a gym teacher after about 7th grade.
Patsy Mink earned her degree. She earned her bachelor's degree in zoology and chemistry from the University of Hawaii.
What? Hold on. Zoology and chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
That is.
Chemical makeup and reaction to so-called animals. Responses and stimulation. Dealing with chemicals over particular animals.
Mm-hmm.
Scientifically, by definition, they'll label humans animals. I'm just saying.
Pamela Hall says, so basically she was studying the behavior of animals and find medicine that can control. And remember,
that's what it sounds like to me.
And she instituted the Patsy, got me calling her Patsy Cline. She also that they're gonna do. She also instituted the Childhood Education Act. He said evolution, perhaps.
But isn't that funny? None of the stuff that she was fighting for in the political realm had nothing to do with her degrees. I'm just saying.
LJ Free says chattel equals cattle. So let's look at the Early Childhood Education Act, shall we?
Do it.
I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat. Y'all know how we do. Again, this is Wikipedia. It's one source, but we have multiple input points. The Early Childhood Education Act is the name of various landmark laws passed by the United States Congress outlining federal programs and funding for children education from preschool through kindergarten. The first such act was introduced in the United States House of Representatives by Congresswoman Patsy Mink of Hawaii in the 1960s. The theory behind the act is that the years before a child reaches kindergarten are the most critical to influence learning. Bingo. Many children do not have access to early education indoctrination before entering kindergarten, making them more difficult to train. That's my wording. The goal of the act is to provide a comprehensive set of services for children from birth until they enter kindergarten. Really? Due division says drugs, and more drugs equal Early Childhood Education Act.
Get them early. Break them before the mother and fathers can ever even imprint anything on them. They want them early.
Since the Early Childhood Education Act was initiated in the 60s, various laws have been passed and continue to be passed as part of the Early Childhood Education Act to better prepare your child for school. These programs were intended to help children in pre-kindergarten years to be more successful once starting school. More successful? Did they have any data to suggest that they weren't successful? Anyway, Head Start. Founded in 1965 by Jules Sugarman, Head Start was one of the first programs initiated as a result of the Early Childhood Education Act. Its goal is to enhance the social and cognitive development of children, offering services in area of education, health, social, and nutrition. This program was originally intended to be a catch-up summer school that would teach the children from low-income families everything that they needed to know before starting school in only a few weeks span. The program has since been redefined and acts have been passed for Head Start programs to keep progressing towards providing better services to pre-kindergarten children for low-income families. So in order to be put in, in order to be put into these schools, your children have to be inoculated and given shots, right? Anyway.
Yeah, in order to go to school, think about it. Yep, you had to get them shots. There go them chemicals. Stimulation.
So then they talk about the National Academy of Early Childhood Programs. So this is the reason why this is important, just for those of you who are not, who may be wondering why we're talking about this. Remember what we talked about yesterday. The areas that have the greatest need get the most funding. So a law was passed because there was a need, I'm using parentheses, air quotes, for this early childhood program. Where do you think that money came from? Because they're going into these low income areas. It's a government sponsored program that the government put in place to give access to HUD Section 3 funds that we were not using because we didn't know it existed.
To build our communities.
Exactly.
So they said, you know what? We're going to come in and build your community and teach you what we want to teach you. And at the same time, we're going to pocket some of this.
Yep. Wow. Different dance, same song. So the National Academy of Early Childhood Programs.
Like Pamela Hall mentioned, ain't that around the time that our community supposedly had these large outbreaks of ADHD?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and prescriptions for Ritalin were being written out left and right.
All right, hold on. Somebody at the door. Let him in. Hold on.
Let's not even talk about prescription.
James Flames, brother, we are so glad that you came in.
Definitely. Peace, James.
Oh, greetings, one and all. Y'all done messed up now.
Peace.
Come on.
Let us have it. What you got?
Y'all gonna see how all of this ties in. That's why I said about Patsy Mink code and the agenda that they were pushing and who these sponsors were and why these sponsors took place, getting into Head Start, aka early childhood development programs, all this drugging and the APA, and why homosexuality was taken off the list as being a disease. Because now all of these other things that our children are so-called diagnosed with under the 504 plan can now be treated by drugs. All this drugging going on, but homosexuality is not. Refusing to identify whatever gender you are is not part of this program that was implemented under Patsy Mink Coat. This was in direct contrast to what Shirley Chisholm was doing. Shirley Chisholm took the mantle from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King of the nonviolence movement. We know the nonviolence movement was the most violent movement, one of the most violent movements in North America. But her movement was called the Bloodless Revolution. And that what Patsy Mink Coat was doing was in direct contrast to that. That's why I asked, what was her background? What was she doing? Former President Obama's mother, and she attended the same University of Hawaii. That same university, the same thought process, the same thought pattern started coming out of this school of thought or this think tank. And how all of this ties in, and I'm going to yield the mic, how all of this ties in back to Title IX being in direct contrast to Title VI. Title IX was to push the white feminist agenda. And that was the bra burning and everything else. And they used you, melanated woman, to get it across. Now, I'm gonna give you an example what goes on in college campuses, getting back to Title IX. Now, if a male says hi to a female, here we go with the Me Too. Oh, don't talk to me. Oh, I can't believe he did that. But they don't talk about what goes on with these lesbian women trying to turn straight women out on college campuses, especially when it comes to sports. I'll give you an example. Cheryl Swoops, who played for Texas Tech, went to Texas Tech, a heterosexual. All of a sudden, she divorced her husband. She became gay. Then she turned around and said, I'm really not gay. I'm straight again. Another example, Candace Parker on the University of Tennessee championship team. She talks about how she was trying to be forced to turn into a lesbian by some of the coaching staff and her teammates. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about how that agenda is being pushed, and how often do you hear that a female is in a lawsuit against a college campus for not protecting her against another female? I yield the mic.
Yeah, they make sure them stories don't come out, but if you look at them court records, they're there.
Keep following the breadcrumbs.
Wow, I'm speechless.
Give me the card.
Wow.
Does the viewing audience now understand why, when there are these landmark rape trials in colleges, it's always one girl being violated by a group of men? It's always in stark contrast to what you actually see going on, not just in college campuses, but all over the place at this point, because, you know, this type of abuse going on between women or with women against men rarely, if ever, gets reported because it's not seen as abuse. I mean, think about this as well. Remember how at one point there was a huge extent of rape allegations that were going on against the Catholic Church, against various dioceses and such in the Catholic Church, and they would just move them around. Don't hear about that so much anymore, do you?
No.
The only place you hear about that now, the only place that you still hear about that happen often is in Guam. And you all mentioned Guam before, about how the Aboriginal people got moved there. That still goes on because most of the people there are Catholic. Okay, the missionaries came there to the other places that they were brought in from, and they'll convert those people to Catholicism, push them onto the island, and now their families there are Catholic, but now you got the diocese over there messing with people. So this kind of stuff that will be considered to be homosexual or whatever have you, while it goes reported, it doesn't have the same gravity and never gets the same analysis and the same scrutiny that these other trials get. These trials where you have a girl get drunk and black out one night, and all of a sudden there's 10 guys implicated because they all violated or whatever have you. It's horrible. All of this is horrible stuff. But what James is telling you guys is, exceptions were made for this kind of thing. So this became acceptable, even if it's still seen as being immoral. We accept it.
That's why these cases keep happening. People change, faces change, but the universities remain the same.
That's right. And if somebody connected to the university itself gets implicated, they just move them. They don't even fire them anymore. They just move them around. They put them in a different department. Let it ride. People will forget. They'll stop bringing it up. But all of this was done systematically. It wasn't just colleges relaxing their own rules for it. No, it was done in a broad brush, governmental and cultural way to be normalized.
Cliff Tiff says, like they're doing my job, you mess up, then you get transferred. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of... Cliff Tiff says, like they doing my job, you mess up, you get transferred. Yeah, that happens in a lot of companies. The companies that I work for. It's called you get promoted past your capabilities. The postal way. Yeah, I worked for the post office for 7 years. Doodle Vision says Title IX was for the acceptance of white liberal women. Any type of abuse is wrong. Whether it's any type of sexual abuse, is wrong. Whether it's men forcing women, women forcing women, or women forcing men. Sexual abuse is sexual abuse, and it should not be accepted nor tolerated regardless of your choice of sexuality. Forcing somebody to do something against their will is just wrong. Forcing somebody to be homosexual is just as wrong as forcing somebody to be heterosexual. So,
back.
But because we're not in position, or we choose not to be in position, we haven't been in position to put programs to protect ourselves and our children and our communities, we continue to put this responsibility in other people's hands. Now we've put our children in the hands, if you will, of some individuals that have an agenda to change the sexuality of our children, potentially.
I mean, you can see it now, how they tried to push same-sex bathroom and all this in school on the younger children in elementary school. How they telling them there's no such thing as sexuality, boys can dress as girls and girls can dress as boys at young ages. We're talking about preschool, elementary school, fragile minds. This is sickness.
Yeah, because it's not you're not having an opportunity to make your own decision.
And I think that's where the depth of the outrage about this kind of stuff comes in, is when it's one thing for adults that have grown, to maturity and are capable of making their own decisions, decide, what types of relationships or what types of lifestyles to lead. It is another thing to begin to indoctrinate and to steer young children who have not developed into a viewpoint of this kind of stuff that they're not prepared for. They're not prepared to decide what kind of gender they're attracted to. They're not prepared for any of this. This is where things, regardless of what you think about people's sexuality, this is where things, I think, you have unanimously gone too far. But the way, like James was saying, the way they've been doing this, the approach has been to get into the minds of the children. It has always been to get into the minds of the children, because if you get them early, you can get them to believe whatever you want them to believe. And it's I think you said this too, Thomas, that it's easier to shape those minds when they're young, even if they don't understand what they're seeing and what context and implications it has.
The greatest example of that is you look at North Korea. The people in North Korea are so isolated, and they believe everything that Kim Jong-un says. If he says he played basketball against LeBron James and beat him, these people believe him.
Right.
Because they've been indoctrinated since birth.
Right. They have no other means to validate or verify anything. They can't corroborate any of these stories. So, I mean, look, you can look at what we have in our communities. How we just follow people that sound like they're making sense. We just follow them. We don't vet anything they say. We just go with it. It's easy to steer people's minds.
A lot of words. I know some of them words. That's what I got.
Y'all funny.
But yeah, and when you look at who are they targeting with these educational programs, where the government is coming in, giving lower income communities tons of money to indoctrinate children in a certain way, and they make it sound like something you can't argue with. Educational standards. Mm-hmm. You want a baseline for what people understand or are able to comprehend, right? But does that mean that we all have to be indoctrinated the same way? And you got to start asking yourself, these same folks that are talking about progressive, tolerant education, they're not teaching your children how to hold a bank account. They're not teaching your children how to balance a checkbook. They're teaching them how to feel. They're teaching them how to feel. They're teaching them how to express their feelings, but they don't teach them how to do anything that functionally helps them as a person in this society.
But the most dangerous part about that is you're teaching a child how to feel before they even comprehend what a feeling is.
Big fact.
That's dangerous.
Exactly.
That is dangerous.
You're giving them adult emotions.
Okay, so let's look at it from this perspective, because y'all know me. I'm all about responsibility. Let's look at it from this perspective, because I agree with you 100%. Had we done what we were supposed to do, they couldn't do that. Had we had already taken control of our communities and put our own schools and our own institutions and our own teachings in our communities, they wouldn't have had any room to do that. But because we didn't, they did. So at the end of the day, who's at fault?
It's our fault.
We are.
Yeah.
But still, you know what the best part of this is? Even though it stings a little when you break it down, is taking responsibility for what we didn't do and realizing the mechanisms to do it now are right in front of our face.
Mm-hmm. Because we'll tell you what the problem is, but now we know what the problem is. Now let's talk about the solution. Stop allowing people to come into our community and indoctrinate our children. I don't care what your belief is. I don't care what your sexual predilection is. I don't care about that. What I care about is we need to get back to teaching our children our ways. We need to get back to teaching our children how we were raised, and stop leaving it up to other individuals, and stop waiting for somebody to fix our problems, because apparently that's not working.
That's big facts. Because if we don't do it, I'm telling you, your children will end up being controlled mentally, physically, financially by the state. They will no longer be yours to raise. They will be raised by the state. And any other corporate or interest group that has interest in them.
Antonio says people rely on government for help because we're nowhere to be found when they need us. Well, that's the thing, Antonio. We're such an emotional body of beings that we move when we're emotionally driven. Anger is one of the fuels that we use like no other group of people. You know, when you get enough of us angry, watch out. Well, because they've been studying us for so long. And I'm not even talking about the government. I'm just talking about other groups, period. You name a group, you name an organization over the past 100 years that have written, excuse the way I'm putting this, written our backs to get their laws passed so they can indoctrinate our kids. I don't care whether it's the LGBTQ community or feminist movement or you name an organization, it's been done. And because we keep allowing it. So my mentality is, okay, now that we know what they did and we know how they did it, what are we going to do to stop it or change it? Because we don't need to riot. We don't need to get physically abusive. We don't need to march. We don't need to go tear up anybody's stores. We just use the same programs that allowed us, that were used against us, for us. I'm going to say it again.
Duality.
The same programs that were used against us, we can use those same programs for us.
Facts. It's our choice.
Or we can just continue to sit back and allow organization after organization to usurp our identity, ride our emotions, and continue to feed off of our economic ignorance and indoctrinate our children. The choice is yours. Again, I don't care how you feel about an organization. I don't really care how you feel about a group of people. I don't care what your mindset is. You know what was done. Now the question is, what are you going to do about it? You have an opportunity to do something for your community. You have an opportunity to do something for your children. You have an opportunity to do something for your county, your state, your environment, your people. Or you can continue to let somebody else do it and whine, complain, mope, try to use UCC codes and end up putting you in jail, leave the country, or do whatever it is instead of take responsibility. The choice is yours. Everybody has a choice. So now that we know the solution, the question now is, what you gonna do? Because when you don't think about a solution, it's up to somebody else to solve your problem. Now that you know the solution, now it's up to you to solve your own problem. That's where the real work begins. Are we man enough and women enough to do what needs to be done? Are we willing to do the work, or are we just going to sit back and be lazy and let somebody do the work for us like we have been doing? I relinquish the mic.
Yeah, and everything TMA just said, I back up and support 1,000%. That the days of complaining, whining, and pointing fingers is over. It's not hard to start using these mechanisms. We told you from the first day, autonomous assembly is built on some of these mechanisms to show you that you can apply this. Now, the more of us that do this, then that means we have more representation. We have more nonprofit organizations that can use 49.9% of what they took in towards any political campaign or party. We have the blueprint on how to set up our schools through nonprofits. We have the blueprint on how to set up our nonprofit financial institutions. Infrastructure. And like David Corey said, one can't do it. So it takes all who hear the call, all who are really tired of the foolishness, all who ready to rise back where we're supposed to be. Find your niche and apply yourself. Do the best that you can do with what you have to change the situation. We already start putting the connections together for the different counties and cities, so we can start doing and having better communication among each other in our situations. So we can start putting together these meetings together on local levels to start getting into front of these representatives and making changes. And if they won't do it, we get them out and we start putting people in that will. Nobody gonna fix this for us, especially when the mechanisms for us to fix it ourselves has been here at least 50 years.
Hey, Bones, I want to say something right quick. Oh, Cliff brought something up. She says, we are homeschooling over here. My sister-in-law has that job. So, oh, Cliff, here's a question I want to ask you. And you don't have to answer it public. If your sister-in-law does not have it set up as a nonprofit, there are lots of funds and freebies that she's definitely missing out. Please reach out to Autonomous Assembly or reach out to James Doodle Vision, and we can help you out with that. Because if you're already doing the homeschooling thing, then it's easier to turn that into a nonprofit organization and get the funds necessary to not only hire the teachers for homeschooling, but also to get you a school, to get you a building. So, something to think about.
Bones, yeah, it's also something that we're doing with Miss Leanne Carter's little sheet. So, yeah, so that way we can start getting these educators from our communities. They can start getting formed together. So they can start, people who already qualified to do this can start linking up and start coming together with a curriculum for our children. It's a start, but we got to push it, and we can do this now. You shouldn't put it off to tomorrow, because tomorrow not promising nobody. And while we resting and sleeping and complaining, they steady coming up with more programs to take away from us.
Exactly. Doe for Degrees states that a college education is not valued at 100,000 plus, especially when every student doesn't have the same earning potential. Traditionally, systems prepare you for a debt downfall. And Doe for Degrees goes on to say, debt downfall equals zero opportunities at generational wealth. That's true.
Yeah, I hear you, Oak Cliff Tip. We're just saying now's the time for all who are doing to start linking up with like-minded ones, so we can start putting our influences together. As small groups, we can't get nothing done. But if there's enough of us, and we start putting our businesses together in partnerships, and start putting our communities together in partnerships, there's nothing we can't do.
Yeah, Oak Cliff, I wasn't calling you out from the standpoint of you're not doing the work. I was saying if there's anything that we can add to it, let us know. Because if there's something else that can be done or added to, that'd be great. So I wasn't saying that you weren't, the work wasn't getting done. So forgive me if that's the way that sound. But we want to be able to help all those who already have something in place to further the situation. Because the less resources that you have to use of your own to further your cause to help your community, that's what we're here to help do. So again, my apologies if it seemed like I was coming off wrong. My apologies.
Mic check.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Bones, haven't we been coming across that there's not even a lot of nonprofits out there that we can partner with, you know what I mean, or that people can utilize? There's not a lot, or we're running into some problems. I was saying, like, switching, having like when in Tifton, you being down there and us having this nonprofit, and you being one of the first to come to them with what we have, and being able to help and wanting to help. Just seems like some cities are waiting for some partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, just my experience in my own city is that the daycare had a conversation with them. She's working with the children, helping the parents and stuff. But through A2, she found about some USDA grants she can use, some other funding programs that she can use by changing from a profit to a nonprofit daycare, opening up the resources and her overhead capital. You'd be surprised how willing your city will be willing to work with you. Cities, this is how they generate their money, by projects and things going on. The more that's going on, the more money the city gets. We just have to start participating at a high level. We say we're the best, let's start showing it and doing it again.
I hear you, Oak Cliff Tiff. I know you gentle. I just wanted to make sure that everybody else that was reading or hearing the conversation didn't think that we were at odds, or we were attacking you. So that's why I did it. I know you good. Bones, Dope for the Green says, have you mentioned the In My Bag tour and A2 partnership?
I'm glad you just mentioned it. Yeah.
I kind of.
A2 and Dope for Degrees are in a partnership right now for the In My Bag tour, which is a nonprofit event that's going on to raise book bags and funds for children that's going back to school this upcoming school year. There's two going on. One is in Danville, Virginia, if I'm right. Yep. And the next one is
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, yeah. Yeah, August the 3rd and August the 17th. Then as well, here in Tifton, A2 is partnered up with Carter's Little Sheep and doing one for the 3rd grade class of Tifton. Just taking advantage of resources and programs that's out there. So anyone that's interested in helping and interested in finding more information, you can contact Dope for Degrees, or you can contact Autonomous Assembly. Later on during the week, there will be information on the website and a couple of samples through the show, so you can get more information on that.
That's what's up. So, again, this is, as we always do, we're here to bring information to you, not to get you upset at the people who are taking advantage of things that we're supposed to be using in our own backyard and our own communities, but to let you know we have every right and resource to exercise the same opportunity. So basically, we can do exactly what they're doing. And the reason why they're getting away with doing it is because we're not doing it. Those hair care shops in your neighborhoods are there because you didn't know that there were funds available for you to provide those hair care shops. Those restaurants are in your community because you didn't know there were funds available for you to provide those restaurants. If you're in a food desert, there are resources available for you to make sure that your community has options The division says Cliff was just translating what TMS was. Okay. So just know and understand that we're here to expose you to information so that you will know that you have options. You can do and move just as effectively, if not more effectively, than the LGBTQ community, and have the same backing and political support, if not more. But it only happens with action. It's not going to happen waiting for somebody else to come in and save us. You know, if we look at history, recent history, we don't have to go back to the 1800s. Let's just stick with the from 1920 to present day, to the last movement. The U2, not the U2, I can't even think of it right now. The Black Lives Matter movement that started out about us and then now has nothing to do with us, almost, it seems. Even the Me Too movement. I mean, it's like every movement rides our backs, and then it goes on to get laws enacted that have absolutely nothing to do with us. How long are we going to keep allowing that to happen? How long are we going to wait for somebody else to come in and save us when we get outraged?
When the rope is right in front of you to save yourself, but you don't want to pull on it. But you're going to watch everybody else pull on it and get themselves out the situation. You ain't going to pull on it.
How long are you gonna listen to individuals that have no proof whatsoever that these movements, like separating from the government, works? No proof, but because it sounds good, and they give you rhetoric like, well, you have to be brave enough to do it, but ain't showing you not their ounce of video of them being brave enough to do it.
But ain't we in this situation from following things that sound good?
Always. We're always the guinea pigs for somebody else's play or show. The beautiful thing about this is we live in a country where you have choice. Even though you don't believe you do, you have a choice. Because you have a choice to participate or not participate, to watch or not watch, to view or not view. If you want to stay on the sideline, that's your choice. But don't get mad because you don't have a voice. I'm just saying. Just a thought.
You're 100% right in that thought, though.
Yep.
James and Copper India, we definitely appreciate your valuable insight and appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to impart your wisdom, knowledge, and information. Copper, is anything that you want to say before we head on out?
I wanted to say again, thank you all for holding up the platform for folks like us to take a break out of the day and not only chop it up with friends and relatives, but also to speak about what's going on and to get a little further to the truth. And I appreciate every opportunity I get to help all of us get closer to the truth and get to what we need to be doing, and also to follow through. I mean, because like you said, this isn't just learning what happened and being mad about it. This is doing something about it. This is where we get the opportunity to take advantage of the time we still have while we still have it to make all of this right. So thank you. Honestly, I can't thank you guys enough. To the panel and to everybody in the chat, everybody tuned in and paying attention and taking all this information in. Thank you all.
Well, thank you for everything that you have done, are doing, and will do in Coffee and Dio. It's an honor to be working with you doing this.
Likewise.
I want to say grand rising to Jeffrey Gordon. Also to Copper Indio, thank you for what you do. We definitely have to get you on this panel and talk about your trip to India and clear up some misnomers about the India versus Indians.
Yeah, we definitely got to do that.
So, really, that's what we're doing. So, yeah, we definitely appreciate you, Copper. So, much respect.
Thank you.
James Lane, is there anything you want to bless us with before you head back to doing what you was doing before we briefly kind of kidnapped you?
Yes, sir. I appreciate you all, and brother No Sellout. You know, he jinxed me, and now I'm down here in the vault, so I'll be able to pop on every now and then. I'm beginning to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. So before anyone thinks that I'm trying to attack the LBGTQRS LMNOP group, I'm going to ask a question, a rhetorical question for those on the panel and those in the chat. What color are your bed sheets? Y'all heard me correctly. What color are your bed sheets? None of my business. That's the same philosophy that I use for the LBGTQRS LMNOP community. It's none of my business. Whatever you do in your bedroom is your business. So I give you the same advice that I give to the Klan. I don't want to see your bed sheets in the streets. So I'll put that out there because somebody gonna say, "Oh man, Doodoo Vision was attacking this." I'm not attacking anyone. I'm telling you what the agenda is, so you can see the timelines. Like Brother No Sellout always talk about. Let's get these timelines, so you can see how everything was put into order. But then you'll understand why Title IX was sent to remove or replace Title VI. I appreciate y'all again, gentlemen, for holding down the fort. Lady Danielle, y'all need to check out what she's talking about and other people's money. I like that. I'm gonna keep using it. And Lady Free in the chat, I know she's hiding out somewhere, but I appreciate all you all listening. And Oak Cliff Tip, I'm with you. I understand we need that translator. But I appreciate y'all. Keep banging like y'all keep banging. And for those who don't understand, they'll catch up later. With that, I'm off this cotton picking mic.
Man, why y'all always make me go on? That's a hot mic right now. That mic is on. I can't do that. You should call my name first. Man, everything everybody said, I second. All right. Appreciate y'all for coming out today. Appreciate the panel doing y'all thing yet again. If y'all have any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections, email assembly@gmail.com. Visit the website. Family Tree Popping. Y'all have a grand day. Is it Wednesday? Hump day. Grand hump day. No, it's Wednesday. Have a grand Wednesday. Peace, y'all.
All right, so at the end of the day, you know what I mean, about balance. And it goes back to what James says. What you do in your bedroom is your business. I don't care what your sexual predilection is, personally. I just don't need to be exposed to it. Heterosexual, homosexual, whatever. Here's something to think about. If who you are is based off of what you spend the majority of your time doing, then who are you? I'll say it again. If we're gonna define who we are by what we spend the majority of our time doing or the actions that we participate in, then who are we? Because there's 24 hours in a day. So what are we doing with those 24 hours? If you're spending less than 13 hours in a particular activity, that means that's not the majority of who you are, because that's not the majority of what you're doing. Hopefully everybody can read in between the lines, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter person to me whether you're heterosexual, what have you. That's your business. That stays in your house. You know, I'm an equal opportunistic conservative. I don't need to see none of that. I don't care. the end of the day, it's about being productive citizens, helping you and helping everybody's community, and moving forward to helping people become self-sufficient. So with that being said, I relinquish the mic, and Bones, go ahead and take us out.
Like we said, it's always fun when we get together and kick it with the relatives. No place we'd rather be. And until to the next Rising Show, everyone have a blessed day and peace.
Peace. Peace, y'all.